Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Good afternoon, and welcome to episode 84 of Mythos Busters, brought to you on this lazy Sunday afternoon of Memorial Day weekend. I'm Sean. Joining me are my friends Nick. Hey, Nick.
Hello.
Are you also feeling lazy?
Kinda. From here on out, my Sunday's gonna get not busy, but busier, because after this, I am making supper for everyone, and then after that, I'm running D&D for my wife and my daughter, and then after everyone goes to bed, I have my Black Mesa stream tonight. So,
Ooh, fun.
Yeah. So this is the start of my busier day, but it's all fun stuff.
Yeah, that's all good. Keeping yourself busy on a holiday weekend, since we can't bloody go anywhere. And also joining us is Ian. Hey, Ian.
Hello.
How are you? Are you feeling lazy? Or are you feeling productive?
I'm definitely feeling lazy. It's been a busy week, so I'm taking full advantage of the excuse that quarantine provides to to be lazy. So, yeah.
And there's nothing like quarantine or a really rainy day to justify just being a lazy lump.
Yeah, it's like, but quarantine. I can't go anywhere. But I do have big news to share, which is the squeaky chair is gone.
You got rid of Edgar?
Yeah, I'm rocking back and forth right now, and there's no squeak.
Wow. Oh, damn. The old man Ian meme is going to die now.
I know. Now all we need is
remembers.
Nick to have a quiet keyboard, and we're
that
people won't even recognize us anymore.
Well, missing obviously tonight is Scott. He unfortunately had to, he had to work. It's not unfortunate because he helps save lives, but unfortunately he can't be here with us. So we'll catch him on the next one. We've got a fun episode laid out for you guys. We've got our normal catch-ups. We've got some fun announcements to cover. And then our discussion topic today is going to be talking about underrated cards, which I think is going to be kind of a fascinating thing to bust into. But before we do any of that, couple things I wanted to cover. So first, reminder to everyone listening, you can come listen to our recordings live in our Discord. Please join if you'd like to do so. And I think probably one of the biggest announcements is that our March to Madness tournament has finally wrapped. Woo! So I'm actually really sad Scott wasn't here for this because he was kind of our biggest cheerleader outside of Justin for this whole thing. But so thanks to everyone who participated and voted in the rounds. If you haven't seen it already, Ursula Downs took this. There's rumblings of... There's definitely rumblings and an internal investigation that's been sprung on Scott's timing of releasing his world-renowned solo Ursula deck, and how that might have affected the election results. But we'll see how it goes. So how did it end up for you guys? Did your bracket stand up at all?
No. I buried under the earth is more accurate.
Yeah. Destroyed by made unrecognizable by round 2 and then completely destroyed by round 3.
Yeah. I really underrated how well Ashcan would do. That was a big surprise to me how well he did. I thought both Mark and Mandy would do really well. They were my picks for the championship, and I was very wrong. They both lost pretty early in the tournament, which was surprising to me.
I don't even remember who I picked for champion, but it was not Ursula, nor was it Ashcan, so...
I think I ended up with Mark. I assumed that there were enough people out there who just saw him as a monster, but yeah, I suppose. I'd be like... What's funny is that the solo bent of the community didn't really show itself until the Final Four. Before that, there were still multiplayer, I guess, adaptable investigators still really in the running. But then once we hit the Final Four, it was the who's who of high-end solo play.
I'm just curious how much of the Ashcan vote was the dog vote, actually. Not so much about Ashcan, the investigator.
Well, I think that follows. I think most people refer to Ashcan as Duke, so...
Yeah.
So as far as finishing, I ended up kind of let's see here. So we had a total of 165 entries. I ended up at 47th, so in the upper third. It was okay. I was actually doing really well until I think till we cut down to 8, and then everything just fell apart for me. How'd you guys do?
I think I ended. I don't know like how everything broke out round by round, but I'm pretty sure I ended at like 92nd. So
91st is what I'm showing here.
91st, okay, yeah. So woo.
I know I did the worst of the busters, and I was also in triple digits. I think I was like 104 or something.
Yep.
It was not good. Yeah. It was not good.
Has Scott talked about his in any official capacity? Because he did surprisingly well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he touched on it a little bit in the YouTube roundup that we did, which, by the way, go check that out if you have an interest. That's just Scott and me and special guest Casey, or Mr. Trench. We did a live reveal of the winner and kind of ran down the brackets as they unfolded, and yeah. So he mentioned a little bit of his bracket there, but Scott ended up at 5th place overall. So he barely missed the actual cut. And then Justin ended up at 12th. So, a decent showing. At least we're in the top 10. So yeah. Anyway, so we wanted to give a big shout out to the winners. So first, main winner would be Jesse H. First place. Let's see here. He scored an 82. So congratulations, Jesse. And then in second place, we've got Derek M. And in third, Virginia J. So we've already contacted the winners, and they are getting sent their fabulous prizes. But thanks again to everyone for participating. There is that YouTube video out there, and then there's a couple recap articles that we posted to our website, so go check those out if you have an interest in kind of checking out a recap with some color commentary.
And there are currently plans to do this again next year, and maybe to make some adjustments or whatever, right? I don't want to commit to anything, obviously, because we just finished this one. But It sounds like we do plan on doing it again next year, so...
Well, you guys know Justin. He's already got plans within plans. So
it's going to be like 10 times bigger next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
I don't want to commit to anything, and then Ian right after, 10 times bigger!
That's my rogue moment. Watch this.
Rake step. Yeah, so yeah, check it out next year. Like we kind of said before, this was something that we kind of threw together in the moment, and I say we, I mean Justin threw together in the moment, and kind of went with it as it picked up steam. But since everyone really seemed to enjoy this, we're going to do a better job of promoting it ahead of time and kind of making it a big thing. And then as well, our audio scavenger hunt has wrapped. So as part of Quarantine Con, we had people listen to old episodes and find choice sound bites for each of the busters and some of the things we commonly do. So our 3 winners have been selected at random from their correct entries. So congratulations to Chris N., Chad R., and Danny R. Your swag has been ordered, so keep an eye out for that. Guys, let's move on to Patron news. Let's do a kind of our play check-ins kind of after we get through our announcements here, because we got a fun one coming up. Ian, what's going on with the patrons?
Okay, so first off, thanks to our board members, Chris B, Chris H, and Chris M, our conglomeration of Chris's, Morton, Jared, Ian, Kyle, Philip, Dave, Abilio, Nathan, Chad, and Robert. Thank you so much for your huge support of the podcast. And also thank you to our special random patron this time around, Andy Linkst. Thanks, Andy, for your support as well. If you have never taken a look at mythosmerch.com, I highly suggest you do, because we have all kinds of cool merch up there, Mythos Busters related, and we're always thinking of new items, so don't be surprised if you see new items coming along the way over time. Dissonant Voices update. So, I'll let you update this, Sean, since you did all the hard work for it.
I really, really, really want to get the Dream Eater cycle done roughly around the time Weaver drops, because obviously I need to get my hands on it. But to that end, I was able to pound out 3 new entries. So, 1,000 Shapes of Horror, Point of No Return and Dark Side of the Moon are all up, so check those out for our patrons. I need to maybe punch Matt in the throat or break his probably break his fingers would be the thing for writing so much, because God, these videos, the Dream Eaters box ended up at almost just under an hour, just just shy of a solid hour of just me talking text. And every other video has been about 20 minutes, and then I got to Point of No Return and it ended up like 8 minutes. It's like, nice. What a difference a single sheet makes. But anyway, those are up there. Yeah. So those are up there, and I shall be getting the Where the Gods Dwell out in the next week, and then June 5th is when Weaver's scheduled to drop.
Yep.
So shortly after that, I will get Weaver of the Cosmos out, and then, by God, the Dream Eaters cycle will be capped and finished, and we'll start work on getting past cycles out.
Woo! And for those of you, if maybe you just wandered in and this is your very first episode, what a place to start. Just the Voices is a series where we audio record the different campaign entries, and that's available to our patrons. The other big, it's not so much patron strictly only news. This applies to everyone in the Arkham community, but we put it here because obviously a lot of patrons have been wondering about what's going to happen with our usual listener event with Gen Con. Now that Gen Con has been officially canceled, I think all of us... I think
totally expected, though.
Yeah, all of us knew that it was going to come. Like, the hammer was just hovering overhead, and finally it slammed down. So, what we all expected has happened. There's going to be no Gen Con, which is sad. So, no listener event, no After Dark, and all the usual stuff we do.
Oh, God, every time you say it, it hurts me.
I know. I feel like I had gotten this thing in my head of like, sometimes Gen Con gets on my nerves and da-da-da, but then now I'm realizing how much I'm going to miss it. Like, oh, yeah. Anyway, that's the sad part. The not-so-sad part is, of course, we didn't want to just leave this big vacuum and this sadness there, and so we already knew that if Gen Con was canceled, that we tried to fill the void somehow. And so how we are going to fill that is our very own virtual convention called FarkhamCon. You can thank Sean for that punnery. FarkhamCon is going to take place when Gen Con would have taken place, July 30th to August 2nd. That's Thursday through Sunday. A wide variety of events. We're not going to announce any of those events yet because we're still hammering out all those details and what you can expect. But for now, the important thing is keep that weekend as free as you can. Go to our landing page for the event, which will be in our show notes. And you can
on our website.
And on our website, you can pre-register, put in your email address so that you'll get all the notifications and all the details when they're ready to be revealed.
Yeah, we've got some fun stuff in the offing, and we've got a lot of the prominent community contributors standing by to contribute.
Yes.
And and help out. So I'm pretty excited. I'm sad about Gen Con because it is generally one of the highlights of my gaming year, but yes, we're gonna do our best to fill that void. All right. So, like Ian said, go sign up to be notified, and we'll do our best to keep everyone kind of apprised of the major things on the show as well as things develop.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, what y'all been playing lately? Ian, how's your Arkham been?
Well, like I said, I've been busy, so I haven't been playing as much Arkham as I would like, but my latest venture has been finally delving into expert difficulty. I finally broke the expert bubble. I've usually played standard. I think I've maybe played like 1 or 2 games of hard in the past, but it's pretty much been like 99.9% standard for me. Finally decided to take on expert through some conversations on the Discord, and I'm taking solo Preston against expert, which is I was nervous about taking solo Preston through standard, so the idea of taking him through expert is even more nerve-wracking. But just hearing people talk about how he's maybe pretty well suited for that, since he has a lot of like testless options, I said, okay, I'll give that a try as my venture into expert. And so the first, I'm playing him through TCU. The prologue was just an absolute shit show, as it sometimes can be. But like, right. If you've played the prologue, you only have limited options as far as what's in hand. So when you draw that like -6 or -8, and it's like, okay, I'm out of options, I'm dead. So Witching Hour went surprisingly well. I thought I was going to get hammered, and Preston actually beat it without breaking too much of a No, I won't say that. He was pretty close to death at the end, but it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. Mostly through a lot of recursion of like intel report over and over, using scrounge for supplies to recur it, gravedigger shovel, all that kind of thing, and of course fire axe to just kill at will. At Death's Doorstep was not as successful, and I started out with a good hand that I was happy with, and man, I think some of what the bag was saving up from the Witching Hour came back, because I was drawing a lot of -6s and -8s. It's like if you're not used to expert, the first time you draw a -8, like I felt my soul leave my body. This is like, unless you're way up, it's basically just another auto fail, and sometimes the -6 feels that way too. So, yeah, it's rough. So Teslas gets you to a certain point, but it can't do everything. Yes, right. Question.
Was it worth it?
Yes, I'm enjoying the experience. This different headspace of trying to, like, it definitely makes you look at certain cards in a different way. And the reason Preston got knocked out at Death's Doorstep actually wasn't any of the actual like play, like he was dealing with enemies and getting clues. It was stupid treacheries. There's one treachery in particular, which is, I think it's an agility test, but it deals damage if you fail. And I drew that thing 2 or 3 times because the discard pile gets shuffled into the encounter deck as it does. And like an expert, I was just like failing it completely each time, so that's like 9 damage just from those 3 treacheries. So it was basically just that one treachery that knocked me out, but that's, something that happens in expert, where like in standard you'd save up your icons or whatever and pitch it, and okay, maybe I fail by 1 or whatever, but in expert right. You're just failing. So taking treacheries is a little bit of a different proposition in expert, I found. And then my latest, I got up to Secret Name. That's where I've stopped, and that was just, I don't even want to talk about it.
I wonder why.
Like in standard, that would be a loss for solo Preston, like 9 times out of 10. In expert, it was just, yeah.
That damn scenario requires such staying power.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing an investigator that kind of has tricks to get shit done, it just kind of, I don't know, every time I have, it's fallen apart.
Yeah.
It just can't keep it going.
And again, it's also the thing with treacheries in TCU where you get I was getting the treachery that it keeps triggering the haunted effect each turn.
Oh, no.
And the only way to get rid of it is a will test. Again, I'm an expert. As Preston with 1 will, I'm just failing that over and over. Even if I try to dump icons in. And the same with, I forgot the one, but that stops you from triggering actions on your assets. So, like, say goodbye to Fire Axe, and that's a will test. So, those are all things that in standard mode, even with low will, you can kind of overcome with enough icons. But an expert, you gotta have a nice bit of luck on your side.
So I assume an expert, then you also just kind of the value of cards that just cancel damage or horror or things. Like, do you find yourself taking Devil's Luck if you're kind of having problems with treacheries knocking you out?
I might now if I could get any experience that I probably like. I think I've had like
That
0 or 1 experience on the past 2 scenarios. So if I ever get an XP again, I'll sure take a look at it.
Boy, that's a snowball. It's hard to stop rolling. God, but that sentence fell apart. Yeah, whew, man, expert. It's a foe beyond me still, but good on you.
Yeah. We'll see. After Preston, I think I'll try on at least another investigator and expert and see how that goes. I don't think it's going to be my permanent mode or anything, but I'm enjoying.
Sounds
a
like
little
it's
bit
going
of,
so well though.
I am a well-known masochist, so maybe it will become my regular mode. Who knows?
Excellent. Nick, how about you? What you been playing?
I have gotten in 1 game of Arkham since we last recorded, which is a 100% increase from the previous time we talked about this.
Woo!
But I continued...
Wait. You might want to check that math again, but carry on.
Nope, it checks out. 1 equals 100%. But anyway, I continued my Achievement Hunters campaign with Finn. So unlike Ian, who's playing on Expert, with a divisive investigator, to say the least, I am playing on Easy with what I would call a unanimously considered powerful investigator. So
Lola
I continued.
Hayes.
Yeah, Lola. No, no, with Finn. So I did Midnight Masks a couple nights ago. I recorded that and got that episode up, so you can listen to that. Achievement Hunters episode 4. I made the decision before I started playing, because there were 2 achievements I was going for in that session of Midnight Masks, that if I got one of them but not the other one, I would continue with that campaign and just shunt that other one that I didn't get over to my 3rd campaign that I haven't actually planned for yet, because it turns out you need to do 3 campaigns minimum in order to get all the achievements in Return to the Night of the Zealot. Oof. And so I did that. That's what ended up happening is I got one of the 2 achievements I was going for, and so that other one just got shunted over to that 3rd campaign. And that's probably like going into Devour Below. There's only 1 achievement I need to get this campaign, the Finn campaign, totally done. And then I can start on my Diana campaign, which will be an expert run.
Ooh.
Why? I'm going to be leaning, because that's the achievement, is to beat it on expert. So,
all right.
So my 2nd campaign will be Diana. I'll be leaning hard on cancels and then doing what I can to just cheat stuff off of, like, cheat clues off of locations as much as I can. We'll see. Ugh. And then I have no idea what I'm going to do for that 3rd campaign. But if you want to listen to the details about Achievement Hunters episode 4, Finn through Midnight Masks, give that episode a listen. I am posting the deck lists, too, as they get upgraded. For this one, I went in with upgraded Derringers and double adaptables. And then I didn't get a lot of experience going into Devour, so I'm not confident in that scenario.
That one can wreck you on the best of days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've never been a fan of Devourer. I've played Return to once, and I didn't remember thinking of it as a significant improvement, necessarily.
Sure.
So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, keep us posted. Yeah, okay, so for my part, last week Scott and I played the new Parallel? What are we calling the actual scenarios for the Parallel Investigator? Was there an actual term for it? Anyway, we played Read or Die.
Print and play.
Sure. We played the new print and play scenario, Read or Die, in our Skids and Daisy campaign. I was Daisy. And it was a hell of a game, to be honest. It was a completely blind play. It might, in fact, be the first blind play that we've ever done live. I feel like pretty much any time we're playing, we are playing stuff that we've already played before. So it was interesting. Early on, as it started to unfold and I saw what was required of us, I was pretty pessimistic that we would get out of it. But between Scott just running interference like mad and me drawing through my decks like a mad woman to find all my tomes, we managed to pull it out. So it was a tight game. It was a fun game. So go check that out on YouTube. my opinion on Alternate Daisy has morphed slightly. Now having seen Read or Die, I get it more. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't want to be a negative Nelly, but I wanted a little bit more out of the change for her ability based on what she lost from stats. But that's just me.
Wait, so now having seen Read or Die, you get it more. Is that you saying that Parallel Daisy works well in Read or Die versus regular Daisy?
I would assume so. Can't confirm firsthand because I am playing regular Daisy in this campaign, so that's what I stuck with.
Oh, I see. You didn't switch daisies for the scenario.
No. But now seeing what the scenario does, and specifically what the scenario gives you at the start to do it, I could see why custom building a Parallel Daisy for that scenario would be an entirely different beast than just evaluating her, in kind of the normal game vacuum. Yeah. Tried to put that in as not a spoilery phrasing as I could. So yeah, anyway. Let's see. What else? Oh yeah, and then I just started a Carcosa campaign running a big money Safina, which has been a really interesting deck. Across from a new Joe deck that I'm actually really enjoying playing. Joe was kind of a meh for me a little bit. He just kind of was like alternate Roland a little bit. And, the Hunch deck is a really cool mechanic. I never feel like I'm able to build a Hunch deck that feels really satisfying. I have some cool moments when, like, Scene of the Crime happens to pop up at the right time. But this deck that I've got actually is pretty fun. It kind of runs lean. It's heavy skills. And then, practice makes perfect. Talk about a card I slept on. Holy cow, that is a good card. And particularly when you're building your skill spread to take advantage of it, like I've upgraded both my deductions and vicious blows. Like that is, I really like that card. So anyway, I got through the first 5 scenarios with that. It's going pretty well. Which scenario was it that just got so dicey? Oh yeah, Unspeakable Oath. Surprise, surprise. was almost done. We just got swarmed right as the monsters started to come out, and then we had to bust through all of the lunatics that we'd left in the halls, as so often happens. And a choice Storm of Spirits from Safina, and then some very, very fortunately timed pulls to get the extra damage out of upgraded Vicious Blow from Joe. Saw us through it. So, man, really tight. And it just reminded me how much I love Carcosa. Carcosa is such a good campaign.
I need to play Safina again. It's been so long since I played her. I don't know why, but she's like an investigator I always enjoyed playing, and I had a great time in Carcosa Iron Man, but I don't know. I think I've gotten caught up in all these other investigators.
Well, I think that's probably it. When you play an investigator a lot, you're like, okay, I've done it now.
Yeah.
Can confirm running big money in Safina is fun. I have kind of become enamored of that build out of Rogue in general. I've also got a Jenny campaign that's kind of leaning that way, with upgraded Burglary, which turns out is just as fun as it sounds. I'm using Tabooed Milan as splash in that deck, so when you go big on a burglary test, you get like 6 resources out of a single action. Wow. It's pretty great. Anyway, so yeah, fun campaigns. I'm really looking forward to actually being able to finish all my Dream Eaters campaigns, though, man. This Shatter Pause before Weaver came out was so unfortunate. Like, it is one thing to have a giant pause in release between campaigns or between products, but to have the cliffhanger
right before the
of
finale.
The last, oh god, so tough. And I don't know if it's just me kind of being like, I guess a little morally stodgy, but I have refused to play Weaver of the Cosmos on TTS because I do not yet own it. So it'll be an actual blind play for me, and I'm so excited. It's almost here.
Unfortunately, this lapse in release has totally killed my drive to play Dream Eaters campaigns. Just because I feel like I should have the final part here. I still haven't played Where the Gods Dwell. Like, I still have not played that one. And, yeah, well, I mean, that's not really the best example because I've played one game of Arkham in the last 4 weeks, but...
Sure.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but, you know, it happens. There are worse problems to have amid everything that's happening, but it's just like, couldn't have been like 3 weeks later, could it?
Yeah. At least we'll get a little taste to hold us over until August or September, whatever the next release after that is.
Is it really that far out for the starter decks?
It's a ways.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I think August is Return to Forgotten Age and starter decks, and September or October is Innsmouth, if I remember correctly. I'd have to look at the page, but yeah, it's something like that.
Oof.
Well, at least Dexter comes out on June 5th as well, so I'll be busy with some Dexter builds as well, I think.
I'll have a new purple pal to play around with. Cool. All right. So, what do we got? Let's go news. Nick, what's been happening?
News has been fairly light as well, so we'll keep this brief just because I expect our main discussion to run a little long. But 2 news articles came out since we last recorded. The first one is a guest article written by Vase and Nate from Great Old Ones Gaming. They talk about solo play in their article, Prepared for the Worst. So if you are someone who hasn't played solo Arkham and you've only ever done two-handed or with other people, then I would suggest giving this article a read. Vase and Nate are good guys. They do good work, and they're friends of the show, so definitely want to read what they're doing. And then the other article... interestingly timed, one might say, but we're not going to get too into that.
No, not at all.
Is Play Together While Apart. FFG official article talking about how to do remote play between yourself and other people who own Arkham and can set up their own table and play remotely with you as well. Yeah. That's the news.
I'll say about that article, their suggestion is to like have basically over video, like one person be like a game master and have a camera on their map and etc. Which, I mean, I'd be open to trying that at some point, but I found like the way we've tried in the past, where just like over audio and each person has it set up in front of them. I feel like that works better.
It's not hard. It's really not hard.
Then you don't have to worry about camera setup and all that, and one person maintaining it. It's like, I don't know. I feel like that's a better remote option, but
it requires a little bit more fiddling on everyone's end. But it also, I think, as long as everyone's able to pay attention to what's happening, it provides a much better view of the board state.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think it'll increase investment in like. You're less likely to get distracted, I think. Like, if I literally just had my player tableau in front of me, there'd be so many times when I just, like, get up and walk away and just, like, be like, all right, well, you guys take your turns, I'm gonna go do this other thing for a little while.
Yep.
And having it set up as if it were you were playing just a solo game, and then, like, then Sean has it set up as if he's playing a solo game, and that sort of thing, like, that increases the amount that you have to do at the table, and thus increases your investment in that game. So I think that's just a better idea, at least for how I play anyway, or my short attention span.
And also,
I think
if it's like,
something there.
Oh, I need to look at this location effect. Like, can you zoom in on that location or read it out to me? Like, imagine having to do that over and over for like each card that you want to look at. So yeah.
Yep. All right. Cool. Well, guys, then let's hop into our main Tupac. Let's talk a little bit. The card pool has grown to a wonderful place in the past little while. I feel like we finally hit kind of that really, really fruitful era in an LCG's life where there's just a wonderful variety of deck builds and there's enough diversity between different effects. And like you could take the same premise and go several different ways with it depending on what you're looking to do. So in such an environment, I think it's important to maybe look back at cards that we've panned. Yeah, I think we do our best to talk about cards that we've tried anew, or you know, as new cards are coming out, talk about cards that have had new life breathed into them. But I feel like it's just as important to go back and just talk about cards that were maybe underrated from the beginning. So we've all got cards that probably fit into several of those categories. So let's kind of run through.
And real quick, before we go any further, I just want to point out that each of us has a list that is at least, I'd say, what's the lowest number? Each of us have a list that's at least 8 cards long. And there's only one overlap.
I feel personally attacked.
Well, no, there's... Well, you doubled your list size since I mentioned this morning, so at least you did
true.
that. But
That's true.
there's only one overlap. Scott and I have one card that we share between our lists. Otherwise, these are all unique lists, which is insane.
Which... I guess to me it just speaks to the power of the current player card pool and a little bit to just kind of the perspective that playstyle plays on all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that's always the big caveat before these discussions, because there may be some where people are like, that's not underrated, but in a cooperative game, there's not like tournament deck lists where you can look at to truly see what cards don't get used. Like, this is all just our perception of what cards we see get talked about or not talked about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, we all have our own little bubbles that we live in, so if you see a card or hear us talk about a card that you're just like, well, we talk about that all the time, it's completely not underrated, then, that's just it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So to that end, one card that I think I would really like to hear more people talking about is a little Mystic card. It's called Sacrifice.
Now, how much of this did you pick just because you wanted to do a Scott Stapp impression?
Not at all. But thank you for the opportunity.
It'll never get
Sacrifice. So it probably would be best that we actually kind of read these as we go through. So Sacrifice is a level 1, 0 cost Mystic event, has a willpower icon, ritual traded. Discard a Mystic asset that you control, then draw 3 cards or gain 3 resources, or any combination thereof. First of all, I love any card that manages to drop in the word thereof. But for 1 experience and 0 cost, this is just such a good little card. It solves so many problems that are just kind of endemic to Mystic as, kind of just as a class. When your spell runs out, discard it, dig for your next one, or get your resources up to pay for the next one you already have in your hand. If you're doing Doom play, this is a great opportunity to just get rid of that Renfield with 3 Doom on him. Draw cards to cash in all those resources that you've gotten. I just don't feel like I see this in a lot of Mystic decks, and man, I run at least one of in pretty much every purple deck ever, and quite possibly 2 in most.
Yeah, I consider this my first get if I'm running a Renfield build. Like, if I have Renfield in my deck and I'm able to get this is my next step, because Doom scares me. And I've especially had games where I'm like, Renfield's fine with 2 Doom on him, and then next thing I know, I'm suddenly advancing the agenda because of the Treachery deck and how that works.
Oh, whoopsie.
Yeah, so, but I love Sacrifice. Sean, I'm going to be honest, when I saw your list, I was like, I think he's not understanding what underrated means, because these are all great cards that I love playing.
That's because we're in the same echo chamber, I think.
Exactly. That was exactly. It was like, oh, no. He's talking about the player group as a whole, like on Facebook and on Reddit and all that sort of thing. And I agree, Sacrifice is one that you don't see a lot of talk about, but it does so much work, and it does work that you really you're never sad to see an empty shriveling go, and then also gain resources out of it. So I love it.
And it's so flexible. Like, the fact that you can oscillate between cards and resources depending on your situation is... Like, I don't know many cards that do that at all, let alone for 1 cost or 1 XP. So,
I feel like this was one I used more when it first came out, especially when I was playing a lot of Renfield. So I agree with you guys that it's good. I'm trying to figure out why I don't use it more. I think maybe
there's more good purple cards.
Yeah, I think
that
maybe
are more clearly good.
Sometimes I get scared off by. the timing restrictions of it that, like, compared to, like, say a quiche you can always play. This one is more like, well, what if you get this when you don't have anything, like you still have 2 charges on your shriveling or whatever, so you have to wait a bit. So I don't think that's enough to say that it's not a good card or you shouldn't use it. It's just something that gives me pause, I guess.
Sure. That's fair. What's one you got, Ian?
Let me consult my handy-dandy list. Okay, well, here's one that I hardly ever see get talked about, and I think I've always viewed it as a bad card. But then when I was looking through the list, and especially, like, expert mode is foremost in my mind right now, it's a little card called Eat Lead, actually. So...
Old rat lead, huh?
Good old rat lead. And I was thinking particularly of the level 0 version, because I'm not sure whether I would spend XP to level up outside of a special deck. But the level 0 version of Eat Lead costs 1, and it's fast. Play when you activate the fight ability on a firearm. You spend 1 additional ammo, and when you're revealing chaos tokens, you reveal 1 additional chaos token. Choose one to resolve and ignore the other. So, the reason I'm thinking this is underrated is because I think I always thought in terms of ammo being a precious resource, and sometimes Arkham is like has a survival horror feel in that way where you really got to conserve your ammo. But there's also something to be said for like, if you have an efficient enough Guardian build, you're usually not running out of weapons, and you're usually able to take care of the smaller kind of putty minion enemies. But it's like the big bosses where you really need to land that hit, or when you're getting in those desperate situations. And Eat Lead, spend an extra ammo so that you can basically not have to worry about the tentacle. Like, I think that's actually a pretty good deal. Like, there's quite a few cases where it's like, anything but the tentacle. So spending an ammo that...
What? No one ever says that.
Spending an ammo to basically say, nope, I'm not going to do that, which Guardian doesn't have a lot of options, unlike Mystic or even like a Survivor, so...
Yeah, and this one came out after the level 2, was it level 2 version? Yep, level 2. And that one... I loved at first glance, because that one let you spend as much ammo as you want to then draw that many tokens. Which the flavor of that's really fun. But yeah, just like ammo is too scarce a thing, I think, in general, to make that one worthwhile, unless you're running a very specific build, which then if you're devoting that many cards to generating and maintaining ammo, then that also limits that card to like a 4-player build, which I don't necessarily think Eat Lead 2 is best suited for a multiplayer game. I think that's probably 1 or 2 players when you have to, like, you don't have as many options, or you can't lean on the actions of other players to take out enemies. But I do agree that level 0 is playable in comparison. I do agree it's underrated. I don't know. I still have never included either of them in a Guardian deck, just because I've said this before, and I know we all agree, 30 cards is not a lot, and Guardian, especially like level 0 Guardian, supplemented with another class, it's really hard to find space for something that you're not 100% confident in. So...
Yeah, I should say this is one I have not actually included in the deck yet. Again, it's one that... But yeah, I really think it's that expert mode that was foremost in my mind, that when I was looking through the list, I was like, wait, this would be great for some of those expert mode situations, like... where you're probably burning 2 ammo anyway because you're failing 2 tests because you keep drawing crap tokens. Like, I might just be willing to spend an extra ammo and be able to peek at 2 tokens instead of like taking 2 tests.
Yeah, and I do like, and we continue to get more guns that have more ammo. Back when it was just the 45 was pretty much the only gun anyone ever took, although it is still pretty much a staple. 4 ammo it's a little tight, but if you're Mark or someone who's got like a Colt, Particularly if you're doing the upgraded Colt where you can pop it back to your hand and pop it back out with 6 more ammo. Like, hell yeah.
Gunslinger.
Yeah, I've built that deck. It is really fun. FYI.
I still need to buy. I'm going to write this down. Write it down on the post-it. That was the deck idea I wanted to try.
Yeah. Gunslinger Mark is hella fun and never runs out of ammo. Yeah, and also point of interest, Diana, gunslinging Diana can take this, and it's a card for her to stack, so that's fun.
Network 57 in chat asks a question that I think is a good one for us to take a minute to discuss real quick, but how is this different than Grotesque Statue? They both do very similar things. Why would you guys think, like, because Grotesque Statue is one that saw a lot of play, especially early on when it came out, because it offered you that option to spend a charge and control the token, essentially. Why do you think, what are some of the elements that cause this to be an underplayed or not played card in comparison to Grotesque Statue?
I think the main reason is just that it's using up a resource from, like, a weapon itself, whereas Grotesque Statue is, like, using its own charges. So I think that's the big difference. I know for me, at least, when I first saw Eat Lead, it's like it's using up valuable ammo that is like a scarce resource as it is. Like if Eat Lead had always been just like using its own supply or something, you know, if it was an event, then I think that would be the big difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also think the fact that Grotesque Statue is an asset that you can put into play, and then you have access to it then at any point use it whenever you feel the need to, whereas this is something you have to draw and then have to get to a moment where you feel like, I don't want to waste, 2 actions hitting this 5-fight enemy. This one's much more timing dependent, whereas Grotesque Statue just requires you have it out. I think that's part of it too. But I think definitely the biggest part is that if Eat Lead somehow created ammo, it would be more closely related to Grotesque Statue, I think.
I think the value that Eat Lead has potentially over Grotesque Statue, not saying that it's a better card, but if you take it in context, just what I mentioned, like, Eat Lead is pretty singular in Guardian in terms of, like, letting you kind of draw multiple chaos tokens and choose the one you want, whereas in Mystic you have quite a few options.
Right.
So I guess the last thing I'll say about Eat Lead, I don't want to spend too much time on one card, but it's not just avoiding the auto fail. The other thing too is some of those chaos token effects. Like there's definitely been situations that I've run into where it's like there's a certain chaos token effect that can end our game or ruin it because it's like putting Doom on an agenda or doing something. Like avoiding that would also be pretty crucial.
Right.
All right, Nick, how about you?
I'm sad that Scott is gone because the first card on my list and the first one that came to mind for me is Lola Hayes.
Nice.
So, because I was approaching this not from what does the community at large, what do they not talk about as far as cards that could have uses, and I was approaching it more as like what do people generally think are bad cards that I think have their uses. I do agree. I will agree with every sentiment. Not every sentiment, but I do agree with most assertions that Lola is the weakest across the whole spectrum of the game when you're considering the investigator pool at large. I think that she has a lot more ground to cover to get to what would be considered like consistent. And not only does it take her longer to, or not only does she have more ground to cover, but it also takes her longer to cover that ground because just her built-in ability is so limiting, despite the fact that she has access to everything. That being said, I have played her a lot. Our first Iron Man, I played her in Dunwich, which again, that's Dunwich, so there's things to be said about the difficulty of that campaign. But she's a lot of fun. She does have some really cool combos that you can trigger. Unfortunately, I had one of those really cool combos and I was unable to trigger it just because of the nature of how the Treachery deck got me. And I think that's kind of where it, like, not only is she not consistent, but also going up against treacheries that discard cards from hand and mill your deck and stuff like that, that makes it that much harder for her too. But she's really fun to experiment with, and I think that where she shines is in standalone mode, where you don't have to worry about accumulating experience, you don't have to worry about that sort of thing, and you can just build the deck you want to build, pick at the cards you want to pick from, half of the card pool, essentially, over half of the card pool, and just really experiment with all the different things she can do.
I think I'm mostly on that train with you, Nick, in terms of, I think she has really become a meme in a sense of, like, people love joking about how terrible she is. And
what? No.
I share in that as well, because it is fun. It's admittedly fun.
Oh, totally.
But in terms of, like, what I actually think about her, I don't think she's as bad as what is commonly said, is like she's the worst investigator ever, etc., etc. Right. Like, if you have to pick someone to be last, then yeah, it probably would be her. But I played her I played her through Forgotten Age with Calvin as like a joke, and they actually did well in quite a few scenarios. Even like Boundary Beyond, I think they got like 3 or 4 of the locations, which is doing very well for a team. So I've said this before, but I think my problem with Lola isn't so much about her power. Like, I think if you build her right, she can hold her own and get you a victory. It's always been more about her fun is where she disappoints me. Like, she's not as fun as I want her to be. Like, she's not as fun as an investigator that can access every class should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because her power comes out when you access the passive boosts, which... by their nature, passive boosts are not as fun as playing this event followed by that event, or this event followed by that reaction ability. And unfortunately, she really hamstrings you in that department.
Yeah, that's very true. It's like a lot of the Lola effects are like, oh, let me get all these passive boosts, but it would be... like, in your mind, if you imagined a cool neutral investigator, it's be like, I play this cool event, and then switch classes and string it into this event, and then into this event. Like, a cool combo-y, tricksy investigator, but that's not at all how she plays.
Right.
Yep. I mean, that's... I'm totally in on the meme. I totally think that Lola's playable. I think Crisis of Identity is obscenely punishing sometimes, and the fact that there are 2 of them in the deck is real rough. And yeah, I mean, that's ultimately my biggest complaint about Lola, is that with the premise of her ability, you want her to be a combo investigator, but her ability literally says, hey, it's really hard to play even a 2-card combo, sorry. But yeah, I do think... I agree, Nick, that she's not as bad as the meme would have her to believe. And yes, I also agree fully that standalone is going to be way better for her, because you don't have to futz through the hamstrung level 0 version first.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember at Arkham Knights I had a lot of fun with the standalone tarot build, and I thought it worked well, but yeah, that's one, like, it would take you a while to build that up in campaign to get all those cards.
Yeah. How many tarot did you end up putting in that deck?
I don't remember offhand, but I'm pretty sure I was focusing in on the intellect and willpower I was playing her more as a clover, if I remember right.
Sure.
I think that's where she's best, honestly.
All right. Well, my next card is one... This is kind of an odd one, because I know a lot of people really like this card and know how good it is, but I feel like I only ever hear it get talked about in a specific context. And that's Ever Vigilant. So, Ever Vigilant is a fantastic card, but I only ever hear people talk about it as the 7th XP after you buy Stick to the Plan. And it is fantastic in that context, but I think it is just as good as an include for any investigator who wants to play assets. And that's a fair few of them.
I'm going to hard disagree with just the fact that you said it's just as good as any investigator who wants to play assets. Because Stick to the Plan working the way it does, I think that objectively makes Ever Vigilant way better if you pair it with Stick to the Plan than if you don't.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, that I definitely agree there.
Okay.
Then I misspoke. So I'm saying that it's just as much worth a look, even if you can't take Stick to the Plan. Like,
Agreed.
so for instance, and it's going to sound like me because it's me. I threw this in Diana deck, and if you see it late in the game, it's not a problem because 2 intellect icons is pretty solid.
Right.
But when you see this early to mid game, when you're maybe running out of spells and you kind of want to re-up, or you've got a gun and a spell you want to throw down, or whatever the situation happens to be, the compression you can get out of this, even if you just get 2 plays and 2 resource reduction out of it, that's still really good. But oh man, when you hit money and you can play 3 assets down at reduced cost, oh god, it's so good. It's so good. But anyway, I just never see anyone ever include it outside of Stick to the Plan, and I think it warrants a look, even if you're not using Stick to the Plan.
When I saw this on your list, I was like, wait, it's not underrated. Everyone loves it. And then I was like, wait, is that just me? And I think how I feel about the card is best summed up by I wish there was like an Ever Vigilant version in every class, pretty much, because especially playing a lot of solo, like, there's a huge premium in being able to get your rig out, which is usually like, I feel like a standard rig is like you really want those 3 assets that you're really concerned about to get going. Feels kind of average for most investigators, and after that it's gravy. So being more than anything, just saving those actions to get that out fast is huge.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why it's so good on Stick to the Plan, because you find it early, you mulligan hard for assets, 1 action, and you're just set up. It's so good. And yeah, like I said, Stick to the Plan notwithstanding, even in a deck that cannot take Stick to the Plan, you're still looking at a double intellect icon, 0 cost, 1 XP card that can save you very likely 2 actions and 2 resources, and sometimes more than that. Very, very good.
Yeah, for sure. I've used it in someone like, say, Skids, who has access to it, so that I can save money for his action ability or something else, because since Skids can be kind of spendy.
Yep. All right, Ian, what's your next one?
Okay, my next one is... Let me consult the list here. My next one is Ritual Candles, a purple card. I'm taking my time before I get to my big slew of green cards. But Ritual Candles is kind of one of these cards that I feel like a lot of people looked at in terms of Jim, and then they said, oh wait, is it really that good with Jim? Because the skull is already a 0, and there was kind of this back and forth with it. But I'm trying to remember the deck that I most recently used Ritual Candles with. And the amount of value I was getting out of kind of chafing the edge off a lot of these bad stuff symbols, where usually they tend to be on the harder side, like -3s or -4s in the standard, and all of a sudden you're turning those into -2s and -3s. And the fact that the Ritual Candles isn't an exhaust.
It's great.
That's kind of one of the key things about it. The biggest downside is it takes up a hand slot, but if you're not really using those for anything, then I think Ritual Candles is worth a look-see.
I totally agree.
Mystic is definitely a class that their hand slots aren't hotly contested by purple cards. Usually if you're running a Mystic, there's a couple things that you could do, but overall you're probably going to be filling your hand slots with off-class stuff. In my experience, maybe I just love the Guardian and Rogue hand slot items too much, but I think this is one that I think I played once in Dunwich with Jim, and you're totally right. I wasn't impressed with it at that point, and so I think I just never really looked back. But I think it does have merit now, especially because like you can build a Mystic deck that is all about maximizing token pulls and everything. Like I think there's enough filtering and stuff like that now to where you could build in a deck that does that entirely, and Ritual Candles would potentially fit right into that. And
it's only going to get better with Jacqueline. Like and Jacqueline, and I ran Mystic. So let's see here. So I actually the deck that I played, where I finally was like, oh, Ritual Candles, they're actually pretty good in the right deck. Was where I tried to get in all the effects that trigger on bad stuff. So your Sixth Sense, your Wither, your Candles, your Eldritch Inspiration, even. Ooh, man, it was a saucy deck. And when you're actually you're comboing all these little things off of seeing the bad stuff, and then you throw in your Grotesque Statue or your Dark Prophecy that help you see them more often, your ability to play the odds on the Chaos Bag, it increases in a way that's hard to actually just kind of conceive of until you see the options that become available to you. So yeah, super good. Super good. Nick, your next one.
My next one, I'm actually excited for because and I'm pretty sure that people have realized this now, but I just realized another combo with this super combo card. Not super combo, but it's a card that encourages combo play, and that is Vantage Point. I have said that I like Vantage Point. I definitely don't include it in every deck. In fact, I only include it in specific builds. Mm-hmm. But in those specific builds, I really like it. And I say builds, plural, now, because I just realized you can trigger Vantage Point when Luke opens up his gate box. And so then you can make that location a Shroud 0 and pull a clue from any other revealed location and put it on your gate box, Dream, whatever it's called, Wondrous Journey. Which I'm sure, again, people have already realized that, but I haven't yet. And I just realized that now. The only other deck I really use Vantage Point in is I have a very specific Roland build that's all about clue shuffling and just pulling clues off of locations quickly and then using them as a currency to get around treacheries and to trigger other card effects. And I have another card in my underrated list that fits into that slot as well. But Vantage Point, I like. It's fast, it reduces Shroud, and it lets you stack clues where you want them stacked. And especially in TCU, like that can have a decent effect. So I think if you're playing Roland, or if you're playing Luke, or if you're playing a character or a build that focuses on exactly where clues are placed, I think Vantage Point is worth looking at.
That is some hot tech for Luke. I have to admit.
Yeah,
that was new for me.
I never realized that. As much as I love Luke, I just realized that now when I was looking this up.
So you think this has value in solo versus multiplayer in any direction?
I have only ever used it solo.
Oh wow.
Because in my multiplayer builds, that's when I tend to get more focused, and this is a little too cutesy, I think, for how I would want. Even though I think there's obviously more opportunities for it to fire in multiplayer, obviously. But when I play multiplayer, other than the Luke build I did during our Depths of Yoth, How Low Can You Go event, I tend to avoid combo, janky multiplayer decks and instead go for the laser-focused, efficient play in my multiplayer builds. So, but I think this, yeah, I think there's obviously more opportunity for it to trigger in multiplayer. I just haven't tried that yet.
Interesting.
This is a card I feel like every time we talk about it, I think of all these cool potential uses, and then when it comes time to build a deck, I always leave it out because there's more bread and butter. Because now I'm like, oh, you could peel it off a victory point location, and
yeah, it's and maybe that's a hard part of some of these underrated cards, is that it's just so hard to conceive of when you'd use it when you're building the deck, but then you're in the middle of a game and you're like, oh well, that could have been cool.
Well, and again, it's just like Eat Lead, where there are uses for it, and there are specific uses for it. But when you're building a deck, there's just other cards that are more consistent in wider cases, like a wider variety of instances, that you can get to 30 cards with. I think that's ultimately going to be the problem that we see with a lot of these cards, is just that the deck space just isn't there for most of these. So
yeah, it's tough sometimes to cut to 30. It's tough most times to cut to 30. So my next card is one that I feel like hopefully people will kind of come around to a little bit more now that it's got an upgraded version coming out, and that's level 0 survival knife. I feel like I see this like go into a lot of decks but get cut pretty much always. So again, level 0 survival knife, 2 cost. It has a fight action at +1 combat, no damage boost, and then as a reaction, when you take damage from an enemy attack during the enemy phase, you can exhaust it to fight back at +1 damage and +2 combat. I really like this one for like an offhand weapon for a killer, particularly in multiplayer, because there's so many times where you're already engaged with an enemy, you kill it, and then you want to get across the board to help someone else who needs it, and you don't have the actions to kill the other one, so you pull it off and you take a hit. Like I don't know if that's just a problem specific to the way I play, but I find that a lot when I play multiplayer killers. And the ability to essentially get a free fight action at 2 damage out of it is great. And then it never runs out of ammo. It's just this. It's nice and cheap. I don't know. I end up using survival knife in a lot of decks, and it's one that I just never really see anyone actually keep in.
Survival knife, I liked since it was teased, or since it was spoiled or revealed or whatever you want to say, and then I loved it when I realized you can throw it at the archers from a location away.
Yes.
And now I like it even more because it works so well with is it level 2 heroic rescue? Like you can make a tank and spank build that's just taunts, level 2 heroic rescue, and survival knife. And you don't have to be on top of the people you're protecting. You can be a location away with heroic rescue, and you can still pop in, take the damage with heroic rescue, and then I think level 2, doesn't that deal a damage back? I can't remember now what level 2 does. But yeah, and then boom, hit him with the survival knife and get him for another 2 damage. Like that is such. Again, I like these janky builds that are, and obviously people are gonna be like, well, why not just use Dynamite Blast and do 3 damage from a location away anyway? Like, well, okay, that's fair. But that's also 5 resources, whereas this is 2. Heroic Rescue is 1, and you're gonna feel like a total badass playing Heroic Rescue in this thing side by side. Pulling all that off. It's just a much more fun moment than like I play Dynamite, they're all dead. Oh yeah, you also take 3.
And then you throw Guard Dog in there for another damage. Baby, you got a stew going.
I feel like I've mostly played this one since Tommy came out. Used survival knife a ton, and Tommy, since he's kind of the resident tank, and yeah, definitely combining it with Guard Dog or some of these other effects. But yeah, I think it does have broader uses outside of that. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking. I feel like a lot of times. I think as Arkham players, we tend to plan for success and say like, well, I have my weapons. I'm just going to kill enemies during the investigator phase and I'm not going to have to worry about them. And I don't know sometimes if we, like a lot of the cards I feel like that hedge against failure are the cards that get underrated and don't get used a lot. Because sometimes there's this mentality of like, well, this is just helping you if you fail. Like you should just be getting rid of that problem in advance. But if you play enough Arkham, that doesn't happen. And as you increase difficulty or like other stuff happens, you draw the auto fail and suddenly you're stuck with this enemy. Like it'd sure be nice to have a backup plan. So I think that's like where survival knife fits in.
And it just doesn't ask much of you. And 3 health enemies are a thing. So even by itself, the ability to like hit it once and then let it attack you and hit it with a special ability, like I don't know, I just feel like it's got a lot of use. Ian, you want to dust off your next one?
I sure will. My next one is Joey the Rat.
Oh, okay. Well, I fucked up that segue. Sorry, everyone. I thought you were going for your next one.
Oh, okay.
My bad.
That's just like Joey the Rat. Joey the Rat Vigil is a rogue ally, 4 cost. Free trigger, spend 1 resource, choose an item asset from your hand, and play it, paying its cost. Oh, Joey, what do I say about Joey? So Joey primarily has been a Preston guy for me, and I think the ability to like dump out. Usually the comparison is against Leo DeLuca, the Manatee, and of course the Manatee will always be superior. But the one thing Joey can do that others cannot is get multiple items out very quickly. And for a lot of investigators, that's not going to mean much because there's only a limited amount of items that they have. But let's say if you have a Preston who's rocking like leather coats and cherished keepsakes and various other items, then all of a sudden it actually becomes a value at a certain point. And especially as a free trigger, the fact that that means you can just get something out without having to worry about attack of opportunity.
And there is value in that. I mean, people play Slight. People play Slight.
There have definitely been, and even just in this Midnight Masks game that I just played the other night with Finn, there was at least 2 moments where I was like, if I could just get this into play now, like I'm sitting on 8 resources, and I have an empty Derringer in play, and 1 in hand, and 3 enemies engaged with me. So it's like, well, if only I could. And Joey, who I have never played with, is someone who could have done that for me. So I think I need to stop sleeping on Joey. Just in general. That's just life advice.
Just don't sleep on Joey.
I also realized, too, and it's not as good as I had hoped, but Joey and Mr. Charles Ross Esquire kind of have a nice little thing going where if you use Ross before you use Joey, you basically ignore that extra spend 1 resource that Joey has. That's a lot of hoops to jump through.
I was about to say, that's a long walk.
With 2 arguably mediocre allies to just save yourself a resource. But I just was like, I wonder if they do work together, and lo and behold, they do. I like to think that Ross is Joey's defense attorney.
Sounds right.
Nick, your next one.
My next one is the one I mentioned when I talked about those specific Roland builds that work on putting clues back onto locations and everything, and this is Forewarned. Forewarned is the Seeker. I feel like I have to read this card again because I don't think anyone... I know I didn't until I was going through the list for this episode, and I was like, why isn't this used more? Why don't I use this more? But level 1, 0 cost, Seeker event... Fast play when you draw a non-weakness treachery card. Place 1 of your clues on your location, then cancel the revelation effect. So, it's worse than Ward, obviously. Mm-hmm. It only works when you draw the card. It costs you an experience to get it. But in that build that I talked about of Roland, who is vacuuming up clues quickly and then spitting them back onto locations to trigger his effects, just to vacuum them up again. Like, this thing fits that, because treacheries... Roland can stand against treacheries, but not great. Like, 3 will is good, but there's still some that can really kick his butt. And this can just help you ignore the ones that you're not built to deal with. Anything that hits your play area or your threat area that locks down your board, this can hit that. And then because it puts a clue back on your location... if you're, again, running that very, very specific build, you can just art student that back up, or you can scene of the crime that back up without having to worry about a test or drawing tokens or anything like that. I can see why Forewarned isn't used in most Seeker decks, even though I think there is still an argument to be made. But I think that a lot of people are not including it because it's just not as good of a cancel as other ones that existed before it, and also ones that have come after it. Whereas I think it deserves a second look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with Forewarned, it's really looking at it in terms of it's almost like spending an action to avoid this revelation. Because if you're any Seeker worth his salt, or his or her salt, should probably be able to get that clue back with 1 action. Right. If that, they might have a faster way to do it. But yeah, so I think in a lot of cases, that's definitely worth it. Like, there are treacheries that say pull out an enemy. Would you rather spend 3 actions dealing with an enemy, or 1 action getting that clue back? Or, that's kind of the most extreme example, but usually scenarios have some treacheries that pull out enemies or make enemies run to you and engage and attack you, or something along those lines. And then, because sometimes I don't take this one in Seekers because I think of it in terms of a lot of Seekers also have decent will, so it's like, I can deal with this, these tests. But there are also some treacheries that just say, like, put a Doom out there, and those are usually the ones that can be scenario enders. So, yeah, I think it's, like, would you rather spend an action to get the clue back, or eat a H of Evils in the face, as an example? So, right. I think it's definitely worth it, for sure. I think it should be used more.
Fully agree. I mean, all the treachery cancels, like, I feel Test of Will's pretty easy. I guess Ward is the one that really gets talked about the most.
Well, it was the first. It set the bar,
It set the bar, and it's also, like, the only one at level 0 currently, which I think really matters.
Yeah, just straight up cancel, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I mean, 0 cost, 1 XP in a class that is pretty good at just grabbing a clue. Like, fuck, yeah, it doesn't ask that much. I dig it.
And roughly half your experience is coming from locations, which Seekers will be clearing quite easily anyway. So you'll likely have the 1 XP to spare on this thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, my next card is going to be one that, I don't know, I'm going to throw this out there and see what you guys think. I don't play solo very often, but when I do, I have become enamored of Hiding Spot for those who can take it. It's just been a wonderful little tech card. I ran this in a solo Agnes campaign. I obviously had a Wendy campaign. Basically, anytime you want to just slip by an enemy, particularly one that can't hunt, but quite often even ones that can hunt, in solo, the ability to just get through a location and not have to address the enemy that's in it is huge. And this card is... Here, let me actually just read it, because I'm sure no one plays this card, right? You guys ever play Hiding Spot?
I have.
It's one I included a lot, but I also cut it a lot.
Yeah, same.
So, Hiding Spot, level 0 survivor, event, 1 cost, 2 agility icons, which is important. Fast, attach Hiding Spot to any location. Each non-elite enemy at attached location gains aloof. And at the end of the enemy phase, if a ready enemy is at the attached location, discard Hiding Spot. So first of all, with any kind of card that's got a very specific use, having a double icon is great. Mm-hmm. So those dual agility, just fantastic. But the fact that you can just throw this out there, like I've had this in Patrice where, I didn't have the chance to use the icon, so for 1 cost, I'll just throw it out there and be like, I'll probably want to scoot through this location at some point. If it has an enemy, then great. But yeah, I don't know. I have found it just to be a really neat little tool. I used it, the Agnes campaign that I played it in, one notable example is the, not extracurricular activity, the house always wins. When the monsters come out from the Hideous Abomination set, sure. I ended up drawing like a second copy of the Conglomeration of Spheres, evaded it, and then the one that came in with the act, they basically hit the same location. They popped into the hallway, and I was still in parlaying with Morgan. And it's like, oh god, I'm gonna hop out and have to deal with 2 conglomerations. I've got 2 friggin' charges on my shriveling. Like, this is just gonna be a shit show. Turns out, drew Hiding Spot next turn. Little 1 cost card, just zip in and out into the resign location, and I'm gone. And it's, I don't know, just little moments like that. I feel like this has a lot of utility as long as you know to play it at the right time.
Yeah. I think part of the reason why I don't use it and why I don't use a lot of the survivor trap cards, like the ones that are literally traps, not like, oh, they fool you into taking them, is just I just forget what they do, and each one has like 3 lines of text and 2 abilities, and my brain can't keep them straight, like, when I'm not looking at them. So then when I'm actually going through Survivor cards to build a deck, I already have in mind, like, the quote-unquote good cards that I want to include, and because these ones I, like, just take a look at them, like, yeah, like, Network says Hiding Spot, Lure, Snare Trap, I glance at them, and I go, I don't want to figure out how I'm going to make this work, and I'll just go on and throw in Leather Jacket or whatever, so...
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same problem that we talked about with Vantage Point. Like, you can kind of see when you read the card, like, oh, this might be cool, and you can concoct hypothetical scenarios, but then when the time actually comes to build the deck, it can be hard to convince yourself that that's ever going to actually happen.
I think for me, the reason I don't use it more is because I do tend to play a lot of high agility investigators, so I'm usually like, oh, I can just go in there and invade if I need to, but I think this is good for, let's say, like a Min who can access Survivor cards and not have to worry about taking that evade test, or even if you're on a higher difficulty, maybe you can't count on nailing that, so you throw down a hiding spot and you can just hop through without worrying about having to evade that enemy or deal with it somehow.
Yeah, and the fact that you can play it anywhere means, and I think the way that Sean used it in his example is like the best use of it, and I never would have thought about that because I totally forgot that you can play it anywhere, but play at the location you want to move through that's full of enemies, move through that location, and then who cares if it gets discarded? Like, I keep thinking that it's something that you should play on your location when you need to get away from enemies, and then immediately I just think like Barricade or whatever like that. It's not great. But no, it frees you up to do mobility through like locations that are full of enemies, and that can be huge, especially in clutch moments like the end of House Always Wins.
Yeah, or like this is a great little cheap option to just scoot past all the cultists and Devourer. None of those are elite, right?
Crap, maybe I take this when I'm doing Devourer Below with Finn.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, anyway, it tends to go in most solo decks that can take it for me, which, has been like 3 so far, but yeah. So anyway, Ian, how about your next one?
All right.
Dust it off for
now
us?
You can dust off that transition. Knuckleduster is my next underrated card. This is a 2-cost rogue asset. As a reminder, it's a weapon, has an action fight. This attack deals +1 damage. The attacked enemy gains retaliate for this attack and takes up a hand slot. Oh, what to say about Knuckleduster? Well, the first thing to say about it is it's very cheap. The second thing to say about it is it doesn't take any ammo. You can hit people in the face over and over and over again, as long as your heart desires. The big drawback that I think scares people away from it, and I would argue scares people away from it too much, is the retaliate that it gives to enemies.
I agree.
And, like, retaliate's a thing. I'm not going to say it's not, but just suck it up and play Knuckleduster. No, well, for one thing, if an enemy already has retaliate, it's not going to get double retaliate, so you're fine. So in those cases, and those are enemies you might need extra help with anyway. Sometimes you have, like, lower combat enemies, but there's like a big swarm of them, and Knuckleduster is good for that. Just squish them and you'll probably nail the test and don't have to worry about retaliate. There are, of course, cards that you can take to cancel any attacks that come through, and I think the thing about it too is you shouldn't think about it that Knuckleduster is your only weapon. Like, you can also use it as like an offhand weapon and use it in the situations that call for it. It's cheap. It's not costing you anything, so you can use a different weapon when you can't afford to worry about that retaliate, and then keep Knuckleduster on hand for the times it makes sense.
Yeah,
I've used it in Tony, and I've liked it, and I have not used it in anyone else.
Yeah, obviously it's
Is
better.
Is it worth a cheeky versatile in Mark?
I think Mark probably has enough options. He doesn't have to worry about it, but it would be fun.
What, in Guardian?
Obviously, it's the best in Tony because the big drawback is it also doesn't give you a combat boost like a lot of weapons do.
Yeah.
So if you have a high base, that's good. But if you have easy ways to boost your combat, which there are more and more of, or you start with 5 like Tony, then you're good to go. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention one of the users in our Discord chat, which I'm actually not sure how to actually pronounce his. I always see his name. I think it's Kahirdir. He's in chat, so maybe he could tell me. Kahirdir. But anyway, he has made some builds with Knuckleduster, like Knuckleduster Windy.
Wow.
And basically killed every of one of the monsters in The Last King, the big bosses. And if I remember right, I want to do justice to this. I think the trick was kind of like emptying out the deck and using Windy's Recursion to use like Eucatastrophe and some other cards, so you were always guaranteed to succeed. And then the other build was, what was it? Knuckledusters plus, it was someone else who's preposterous. Now I can't remember. But anyway, there's some jank possible with it. But just on the surface of it, I think Knuckleduster is a card that should be looked at more.
Yeah, it's one of those that I was waiting for the right investigator to come out, and boy, Tony certainly is that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Nick.
This next card is the one that is the only case of overlap amongst all of our lists. Both Scott and I had this one in our list. I think maybe at the end, if we have a little bit of extra time, we can talk about some of Scott's cards. But this is True Understanding, the level 0 Seeker skill that adds 1 will icon, and then commit only to a test from an ability printed on a scenario card, and if the skill test is successful, discover a clue at your location. I don't know, but I'm gonna guess that the reason why people don't include this is because they don't have a clear idea of what is and what isn't a scenario card.
Yep. Fully accurate. Fully
accurate of myself oftentimes.
And the reason why I put this on there as being underrated, because I think that it's a wild icon, so you can commit it to any test. Scenario cards would be obviously act agenda, locations, and I also believe, and I should have researched this before literally right now, but encounter cards are scenario cards, are they not?
Yes, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's
I'm pretty sure they are too.
I think there's a Venn diagram, and like scenario card is a big circle, and encounter card is a small circle inside it.
Right, because the game is essentially split into player cards and scenario cards, and then from there are where the further delineations come from. So this means that literally any treachery that you pull that makes you test, which I got news for you guys, there's a lot of them. You can commit this and get a free investigate off of it as long as you're successful. So I think True Understanding is one that a lot of people, again, they don't include because they see scenario card, and I don't know, but I think that this is also the only player card that specifically calls out scenario cards. So if you're not someone who's, chest deep in the rules like we are usually, you can see that and go, I wade, but you can see that and go like, what the hell? Like scenario card, I don't know what that is. I'm just not going to include this because it's not flashy. It's not super great. Like it's not, I wouldn't say that it has overwhelming positive effects. So of course you're not going to then take the extra step to figure out exactly when you can and cannot use this card. But I think True Understanding should be used more often because it's essentially netting you a free investigate, especially if you're committing it with additional cards, or if you're playing Min, play Min and drop this one on a treachery and get that free clue with basically, then it's basically an unexpected courage, if successful, gain a clue. Like, I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head. It seemed like an interesting card, but just my lack of ability to internalize exactly what it can be used on has always kept me from actually including it. So I will try, because Scott has pitched it to me too, and now you are telling me it's good. You know what? I'll make it an effort to put this in my next Seeker deck.
I think the pushback here for me is on the one hand, yes, the scenario card part, which makes me wrinkle my brain too much, and I'm like, I just don't want to bother with having to think about it. But the other part is, sometimes I have this mentality when I'm playing Seeker that I have the tools to get clues as it is. I don't need this little extra topper on top of it. But there's definitely something to be said for the way this can compress actions and mess with the timing a little bit. Like if you're able to get a clue like while you're taking a treachery, that might be useful in certain cases. So yeah, I agree with Sean. I think this is one that you can only really measure by trying. I don't think you can really get a sense for how it works or how well it works until you actually play it. Which is probably why it's underrated.
All right, moving on from there. This one's going to be a little odd, but follow me. I think that a lot of people, when they get the core set, because this is a core set card, end up playing it just because it's one of the few options they have. But I feel like once, they buy Dunwich or they buy whatever their next set is and they start to have more options, it kind of falls by the wayside and people forget how actually good it can be. And that is Dodge. I feel like outside of people building very early game, like I said, core set based decks, Dodge doesn't really get used a lot. At least I don't see it get used a lot. And it's really a nice little card, particularly in multiplayer. If you're sticking around people and have more opportunities to stop a nasty attack, it enables you, most importantly, it enables you to do things that would otherwise be unfeasible because of attacks of opportunity or because you're going to end your turn at a bad spot with an enemy. Because there are so many times where, say, you're sitting outside a location and you're like, well, I can't end my turn there, but I would love to start my turn there. And Dodge is the solution for that. It's fast, it's one cost, it's level 0. It's just a wonderful little card, and I think it deserves a second look outside of the core meta.
I definitely don't use it as much as I did in the early days, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, and I think one of the big things that kind of separates players who are just starting out from when you gain more experience with the game is learning how to manage and take advantage of like dragging enemies around and opportunity attacks and all that. That kind of is one huge thing that can up your game, and yeah, Dodge is definitely part of that. That can, if you can get value out of what would have been an opportunity attack but you're able to cancel it, that's great. But yeah, it's also useful for a bunch of other situations, like a retaliate coming from a big boss or just all kinds of situations.
No, I totally agree. I love Dodge. I used it a lot back in the early days of the game, and I think it was probably somewhere between late Carcosa, early to mid Forgotten Age when it stopped becoming like an almost auto include, Mm-hmm. It's still one that I'm never sad to have in the deck, because you're going to take attacks, and most of the time you're not going to want those attacks. So I think I use it more universally in Calvin than in anyone else, just because I like to get him, as most people do, you like to get him to like riding that line between alive and dead pretty early, and then from there you need something to keep the damage at bay, and this is a nice little quick card to do that. But this is still something that has a place in pretty much everyone else that can take it. And like another thing too, like last episode I said, what does Guardian Access get parallel Daisy? And here's a great card that you can get in parallel Daisy with Guardian Access. Not as good as Guard Dog, but you're also comparing assets to events. But yeah, no, Dodge is great, and anyone who has access to level 0 Guardian would be able to find a home for it, I think, in their deck.
I think one of the craziest parts of Dodge is that it's any enemy. It can be an elite enemy. this is something where I feel like it easily could have been non-elite only, compared to something like Feint in Lord of the Rings, where like if an enemy is immune, you can't stop that attack. So it's nice that that's huge value for a level 0 card.
Yeah, I mean, you can dodge a swing from Yogg Sothoth, which, you know.
As you do.
If you've played Lost in Time and Space, there's value in that. All right, Nick. No, sorry, Ian. Let's retain order.
All
order.
Right, where am I at? Oh, Coup De Gras is my next underrated card. I do hear people talk about this every now and then, but I'm not sure if many people like it as much as I do. Coup De Gras is a rogue event, 2 costs. Deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location. No test, just deal 1 damage. If this effect defeats that enemy, you draw 1 card. If it's your turn, you have to end your turn, and this action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. So the big drawback here is that it ends your turn. So you have to work around the timing. Definitely is kind of the key consideration that I think maybe causes some people to shy away from Coup De Gras. But other than that, there's just a lot of situations where, I mean, just testless damage is good. Like, and unlike sneak attack, they don't have to be evaded. Unlike small favor, it's not provoking an attack of opportunity. Just deal 1 damage to an enemy, and you don't have to worry about a test. Like, that's worth its weight in gold in a lot of cases. Especially for 3 health enemies is where like Forgotten Age is where I got a lot of value out of this because there's a lot of 3 health. But also, you know, just like a stupid whippoorwill that you just want to kill. Like,
yeah.
And if nothing else, 2 combat icons. So.
Yeah, Coup is one that and unfortunately I have stopped using it as much as I used to because I've had too many instances where I have it in my hand and just don't have an opportunity to play it. And that is totally like, that's specific. It's not fair because I'm saying that I don't use this card anymore because the specific instances that I ran into, it wasn't useful. When in reading this card, this is one that I can totally, like, it's very obvious what its use is, and that it's a use that's going to come up multiple times, but unfortunately, in the limited rogue experience that I have, it just didn't really shine for me. I know I had it in Tony, I know I've had it in Finn in the past. I think I've included it in decks probably a good 10 or 12 times, and I think I've played it maybe twice, and unfortunately that was just too low. And you know, now I might feel a little different about it because we're talking about it here, and most of the cards we're talking about here are cards that I go, yeah, I should play that more often. But at least absent this discussion, I was kind of like, doesn't trigger often enough for me to want to put it in there. But at the same time, I also think that of all the classes, Rogue level 0 is the one that is kind of, they have some really good tools in there, especially now, but it took them a while to get there compared to the other classes. I know, especially out of the core box, Rogue suffered the most at level 0, I think. And this is a card that's undeniably good. Like, just when you read it and you see what it offers, icons, cost, effects, it's great. And it's level 0. So I should be able to find space for it more, but
yeah.
Scott and I made it a special achievement when we started the Return to the Night of the Zealot, our current TNA campaign. Scott killed the Ghoul Priest with Coup De Gras.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, this is another card that's not. It can hit elites. Yeah. Yeah, my recent one was I was playing Tony against Rougarou, and I finished off the Rougarou with Coup De Gras.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. Which felt nice. Yeah. And obviously...
Sean, now Skids has to Coup De Gras Immortal.
I mean, we are definitely just going to feed him Lita, but we'll see how it goes.
And then Coup De Gras Lita.
I think that's mercy killing.
Yeah, not quite Coup De Gras.
I mean, to be fair, she did stir up all the shit. I mean... all right. Oh, back to me, right? So let's each...
Nope.
Oh, no, Nick. See, order. I'm terrible at this. Nick, hit us with your next one.
So this is one that I am surprised I don't see brought up more, and I think it's because it's exceptional. And I think the exceptional cards in general are like that keyword. At first glance, it signifies that the card is super good, but then it signifies that you only get one in your deck, and you better just hope it comes up. I'm talking about Borrowed Time, level 3 exceptional rogue card. I'm surprised that I don't see this one discussed more, because it's really good, and this is one that I wasn't excited about when it was announced, because it's like you have to spend an action to stow an action on there, and then you lose the actions. And what turned me around to it was at Gen Con a couple years ago, I played in a game with Matt Newman, and of course he would have a deck like this, but he brought a Skids Borrowed Time Chicago Typewriter deck. And by like turn 4, I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. How did I not see this? And the one thing I didn't realize was that, and of course I didn't realize it because it takes another step, like it takes a familiarity with this sort of action play to understand this just from looking at this card, and I lack that familiarity. But at the end of your turn, you just spend the actions on Borrowed Time to keep the actions on Borrowed Time, and you're not losing anything. Yeah. You're not out anything.
You can always put them back down.
Exactly, yeah. So I think the thing that really holds this card back is just the fact that you can only include one of it in your deck, and it costs you 6 experience, which is no small amount. So that means that especially if you're playing older campaigns, you might be waiting 2 scenarios and not getting anything to pick this up. But I think in standalone play, and I think that if you're building, especially if you're building a deck to really take advantage of extra actions, skids, swift reflexes, Mississippi Manatee, quick thinking, that kind of stuff, this is just going to increase the consistency of a deck like that.
This was a card that took me a while to take the time to experiment with. It was one.
Make sure you give it back.
Not sure I'm happy with myself for that one, but I'll keep going. But it was one that always interested me, and it takes it takes some mental energy to figure out exactly how it works. But I think the card that really cemented this one for me was actually when Haste came out, and Haste and Borrowed Time work really well together. Because you can spend 2 actions to get clicks and then get a free third click with Haste. Or when it's time to use up your actions on Borrowed Time, then you're also able to roll Haste into that. And so suddenly you're taking 7 actions in a turn, 8 actions in a turn, and it just snowballs. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I was playing a Finn build with those Borrowed Time and Haste, and yeah, so I think it's a good card on its own, but I think especially with Haste, then you're really turning into a time wizard at that point.
I still have never ever played this card, but I did, Nick, watch Matt play that deck that you mentioned, and it does seem fun. And it's the kind of thing where I think about how often, kind of like I was talking about with Hiding Spot or Dodge, where there's just so often where there's a room you want to get into that has a monster in it, but you kind of stop outside the room because you don't want to get in yet. You want to start your turn there and have more actions, but you have one odd action left. And aside from the crazy strings and combo play, even having Borrowed Time out to just be all right, well, I would rather not just draw a card right now. Let's bank an action for next turn and do more next turn. It's even the simple stuff seems like it'd be pretty good from time to time.
Yep, and if you're running a deck that has anything that nets you extra actions, then you can use those to stack clicks on this without falling behind, in terms of just regular tempo. And also, I just want to say that I think in the future, we should only use the term click economy to refer to instances that use Borrowed Time. So as a community, if we can all just get on board with that, I would
true
appreciate
click economy.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I'd be fine if we just never say click economy again, but I get it. I get it. All right, so at this point, maybe we each run down one more.
Sure.
And then we wrap on it.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'm gonna steal one off of Scott's here because I'm jealous that he thought of this and I didn't remember it because it's one I definitely love. So everyone loves shortcut level 0, right? Like that is just an amazing card. 0 cost, fast move. Everyone does it. I don't see shortcut level 2 getting used as often, and I think particularly in multiplayer and particularly in scenarios where there's a hub location or like a narrow, like a bottleneck location where generally everything has to go through it. Shortcut level 2 is great. You can get it. It's still fast. It only costs you 1 resource, and you can get way more than a single free action out of it over the course of a game. So, and I think here now I have to look the card up again. I'm pretty sure you also don't only have to play this during your turn, which is a restriction on the first one. So you play it only during your turn, but the location gains just a free triggered action to move. So you can trigger it at some really odd timings, whereas level 0 shortcut literally can only happen during your turn. So anyway, level 2 shortcut I think is an amazing card.
I agree. I think level 2 shortcut, I think the reason why it doesn't get talked about as much or maybe even doesn't see as much play as level 0 is just because it's more reliant on the map. Whereas level 0 shortcut, there's never a time that you're not going to find a use for it.
Sure.
And with this one, there's been a couple... I think there was even a time for us when I played it... I'm trying to remember what scenario it was. Was it the Secret Name version 2? I can't remember what the remake... Not Thousand Shapes of Horror. The one with the endless stairway. Anyway,
that's Thousand Shapes.
Yeah, 1,000.
Is it Thousand Shapes? God, all right. These names, man. Where I played shortcut level 2 like a round before the map just got scooped, and I was like, well, great, like there goes that card, glad I did that. Whereas again, level 0 is just like use it when you need it and then you're done. But if you're doing standalone, because a lot of the like standalone scenarios are scenarios that shortcut level 2 works really well with because they're these big maps that tend to have 1 or 2 locations you're going to go through many times in the course of a game. Standalone play, this is amazing. Multiplayer, this is really, really good. I like level 2 a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely a good card. I'm trying to figure out why I don't use it more. Maybe it's just a matter of upgrading other stuff instead, I think, is what it comes down to. But, there's definitely... I think it's one of those cards that, in the right scenario, it can be so crucial. And then sometimes... It's just dependent on map structure in a way. Like, there's 2 main types of scenarios, it feels like. One where you're like just constantly bouncing around the map, and so you're constantly passing through the same location, and then the more like not necessarily linear, but they feel that way, where you're going from one part of a map to another and you're not necessarily passing back through. So I don't know, I'd have to crunch the numbers to see which type is more prevalent.
All right, Ian, let's hear your last one.
Well, I had a few more on my list, but I think I'm actually going to dip into Scott's list as well. Because there's a card here I see that I think both me and Scott share a love of, and that is our good friend Dr. William T. Mallison.
You stole the one I was
Group steal.
I love how the last round of this just turned to plundering Scott's list.
Mallison is so good, and I think he... again, this is all subjective. We don't know exactly how underrated, but I don't see him talked about as much as other allies. But he's just ridiculously good in my book. 1 cost only gets you 2 health and 2 sanity. Like, that would probably raise my eyebrows alone. And then his ability to, when you draw an encounter card, exhaust Mallison, place 1 of your clues on your location. So, similar to Forewarned. You cancel the drawing of the card. But what happens here is you shuffle it back into the encounter deck, then draw a new card. So the little trick here is that you might potentially draw something worse or draw the same card again, which happens to me freakishly often. But that's not Malison's fault. His ability is great, and anyone who plays a lot of solo knows how swingy solo can be. So again, similar logic to Forewarned. Yeah, you have to get the clue back, but even if you have to spend an action to get the clue back, and you might not always, because you might have some secret trick to get it back for free, but even if you have to spend the action back, like, would you rather do that, or would you rather deal with the conglomeration of spheres or whatever other monster just dumped on your head? Like, I think I'd rather put the clue back. And yeah, you'll take your chances on what you draw, but to me, that's part of the fun and strategy of Malison. You got to play it smart and know when to use that ability and know when to not use it. And so I like that aspect of the card as well. So just overall, just a fantastic card. And I often use him with charisma, and like we talked about an offhand weapon. Sometimes he's like my offhand ally. Like I have another ally who's like the main guy. Maybe it's Milan or something, but Malison pulls a lot of work in that other slot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Malison is the one who inspired the throw clues back on locations Roland build originally. When he came out in Carcosa, right? Early Carcosa? I think that was when I started that deck. And it's just super fun. Not even like, and his, like, the fact that especially with Roland, like, if you throw the clue out to get rid of Frozen in Fear or Ancient Evils or whatever, and then you draw an enemy, then that's just icing on the cake, because then it's like, well, I can get that clue back, no problem. Like, oh, it's great. I love Malison.
He came out in Lost in Time and Space, actually, so pre-Carcosa.
Oh, nice. Well, that would explain why I did the deck early Carcosa.
All right. Yeah, and I do have to say, I particularly in solo really love Malison, just because the ability to toss back the thing that's about to wreck you, chances are you're going to draw something that's less bad most of the time. I do struggle sometimes with deciding whether or not to trigger him. I don't know if anyone else has that.
Oh, yeah.
It's a struggle sometimes. But in Scott's dream, what's the dub stand for? Scott and his initialisms.
Dreamy,
I lose track.
Ursula, something.
Yeah. So his solo Ursula deck that's at the top of Arkham DB right now uses this to great effect, because again, just the ability to just keep on keeping on and toss back that treachery that's about to slow you down is just so key when rushing is your strategy.
Mm-hmm. I just find it such a well-designed card, which makes me appreciate it even more, because there's the strategy of not only when to use it, but the strategy of like knowing to hold on to one of your clues. Because I've run into the situation, I'm sure you guys have too, where it's like, okay, I can use Malison. Oops, I spent my clues. I don't have a clue to put back. I'm screwed. So yeah, that's part of the strategy as well. Just overall well-designed card.
Excellent. Nick, hit us up with your last one, preferably stolen from Scott.
Totally stolen from Scott. Even though I still have a couple that I would love to talk about, but the one that I want to take from Scott is Barricade, because I don't think there has been a single other card that we all shat on as consistently or as often, and then almost immediately did a heel turn when Cerebro Min became the deck build that really exploited this. And then again, later, as he says in here in his list, with Luke, and how Luke makes Barricade go from not worth the card space to suddenly being like broken almost. Just level 0 Barricade. It has 3 single icons on it for skill icons, so you're not really looking at it for that. And it's attached to your location. Non-elite enemies cannot move into attached location. Forced, when an investigator leaves this location, discard Barricade. You know, whoop-de-doo. But Cerebro Min being able to camp in a location and still assist players no matter where they are, and then make use of Barricade, is huge. That was a big step. And then also Luke being able to throw Barricade wherever the fuck he wants, and then just leaving it there for probably most of the game, and having it do its work. Like, those can shut down certain scenarios, and maybe not for the whole scenario, but for at least a couple rounds, if you're doing one of those two things. this is a card that I'm still surprised at how quickly all four of us went from terrible, don't include it, to, well, in these two investigators, it does super good work, so.
Yeah, it's an interesting little card, because, God, it's so many of these just fall into the trap of, I can see when this would be useful, I just fail to recognize that could happen very often. When, in reality, is if you've got it in your deck, chances are you're going to find the opportunity. But yeah, God, particularly with Luke. Like, I know we talked about it with Min when she came out, and that definitely does do work when she's camped down, but, oh, man, with Luke... I've done some obscene things avoiding enemies in Luke.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely one that I think we were justified in panning early on.
I do too.
Yeah, we're not apologizing.
Yeah,
let's be clear.
No.
But yeah, I think it's gotten some new support from those investigators, and I think part of the reason is because a lot of scenarios it is just kind of keep going. You got to keep going. You can't afford to worry about staying in a location, so you can keep this barricade up. But I would be curious to see like the uses of potentially. I think it's like a tech card, which a few of these cards we've talked about are, that there are scenarios where maybe you want to put this up so you can get stuff done in a final location or something. And so that hunter enemies can't get in there or something. But yeah, Arkham is just the game of 30 cards, and sometimes it's hard to find any space for tech cards.
Agree. All right, well, fun times. If you find yourself using any of these cards that we mentioned based on our arguments, do let us know if you find that we're right, that they're underrated, and you end up enjoying them. Also, let us know if you find out that they are rated appropriately and that we're wrong.
It's probably more likely.
I'm leaving the door open for both comers. All right, guys, let's move it on to a little bit of technical time. Ian, what's been grabbing you of late?
Well, honestly, not too much different from before. I'm still playing through Final Fantasy VII, so I don't necessarily want to put our listeners to hearing me through me talking about that again. But I'm steadily working my way through. Eventually, I'll beat it. I'm on like chapter 13, so not too far away. The only other thing is I downloaded recently and started playing just a little bit of, but really enjoying a game. And those who have listened to this podcast before know my fondness for point-and-click style adventure games. And this one is called Virtuaverse. And it is a cyberpunk-themed point-and-click adventure, kind of retro-style graphics. But man, they really managed to capture, like, it is just oozing with that cyberpunk feel, from like the color palette to the retro graphics, and the music is fantastic. Like, even if you just watch the intro to it, if you can watch this intro and not be affected, then I don't know what to tell you. But so like I said, I just started playing it, but I'm really enjoying it so far. It give me some of that cyberpunk goodness. So yeah, that one is Virtuaverse. I think it came out fairly recently.
Cool. Nick, how about you?
I have been, since I did the final upgrade to my computer and actually got a second monitor, I have actually been stepping up my streaming game a little bit. Unfortunately not with Arkham, but hopefully in the future. But currently what I'm streaming is on Sunday nights, so that includes tonight to our live listeners at about 9 p.m. Central Standard. I've been streaming one of my favorite video games of all time, which is the original Half-Life. I've been streaming the remake, Black Mesa, but it's pretty much a point-for-point, asset-for-asset remake. It is almost exactly as I remember it. Super fun. So you should come join me on that Sunday nights at 9. I do that for a few hours. Monday nights at 7, I've been streaming D&D 5th Edition 3-shot, I guess, just a dungeon. I've been running Casey, Dave, Matt, and Justin all friends of the show. Well, Matt, obviously, designer of Arkham, but running them through Tomb of Horrors, which has been hilarious and tense and puzzly and super fun. And they're starting the third and probably final section of that tomorrow night at 7 p.m. And then I'm introducing a third one, hopefully regular, but I'm going to prioritize Black Mesa. But every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. for at least the next few weeks, I will be playing Alien vs. Predator Classic 2000 Edition. Ooh. One of the first, not one of the first FPSs, but it was an FPS that I played the hell out of, and I know Sean played a lot of it too.
Yep.
And it's not... I originally described it to one of my friends as a horror game, but it's not really a horror game. It's an action game first and foremost, but a lot of the enemies are randomly distributed and will just suddenly just pop up if you're spending too much time in one place. It really forces you to keep moving. And so there is a little bit of jump scare element to it as well. Plus it's AVP, and it's one of the darkest, not in theme and tone, but in literal lighting. Like, it's one of the darkest games I can remember.
Fucking shut your windows, man.
Totally, yeah. So I'll be streaming that on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. And also, after I beat the 3 campaigns in AVP Classic, I would love if I could get a couple of you guys, Sean, Ian, Scott, maybe Kip and Evan as well, just get some people on to run some multiplayer games of AVP for a stream.
Oh boy.
Because that is one of the most frantic and hilarious and fun multiplayers I've ever played, and they still have servers up for it. So
that's insane.
If we can,
20
we
years
should.
later.
I know. It's insane. Absolutely insane. But that's twitch.tv/Nicholas Corey. Other than those, all I've really been doing since I beat Final Fantasy VII, I haven't really played much on the PS4 other than Cities Skylines, which is a city builder game, which, it's free for PS Plus for May, so you only have a few days left to pick it up. But I played it on PC back when it came out originally a few years ago, and now that it's on PS4, I don't have to worry about my PC suddenly slowing down and chugging through some of the processing power that Cities demands. But it's a fun little city builder that I've been just wasting a couple hours on every few nights. So yeah, twitch.tv/Nicholas Corey. Join us tonight, tomorrow night, and Wednesday night for my streams.
Cool. Subscribed.
Yay.
And then for my part, I finally capped off Control on the PS4.
Nice.
Quite a fun game. Nick, I think maybe the frenetic, really mobile playstyle you want is pretty close to possible. You just have to get farther in the game to get a couple of specific abilities. So I don't know. When you get a chance, I might give that one another swing. Really ended up liking it. It's got some really fun sequences that are just Remedy being Remedy. But yeah, overall really enjoyed it. I'd be excited to see what they do with any sequels if that ends up being a thing. I'm now going to wait until, because I've borrowed Justin's version of Control, so I'm going to get that back to him because the DLC just came out. I'm going to wait until all DLC has come out and then get my own copy and pound through the DLC and see what they improve on from the base game. But anyway, 2 thumbs up on Control. And then on top of that, I should be getting to new games, but god damn it, I just can't help myself sometimes. I finally bothered to go back and platinum Bloodborne, and that is to get all of the trophies, all of the other trophies in the game, which requires a decent amount of diligence and calling in a friend more than a few times. But I did it. I platinumed a FromSoft game. And this might be the last time you hear me talk about Bloodborne on the show for a good long while.
I won't take that bet.
I'm not making any promises. I'm just saying it might happen. So anyway, I'm looking forward now. I downloaded Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Odyssey.
Oddity sounds great.
I'd play that. But I haven't played an Assassin's Creed game since 3, and they've gotten just even looser and looser with what they let in as far as fantasy goes, and I am a huge Greek mythology nerd, so I just am sign me up. I want something a little lighter. I kind of want something I can just sit down and play now that I've pounded through 3 FromSoft games in a row, and yeah, so looking forward to reporting back on that, because now that I've capped off Control and Bloodborne, my queue deserves some attacking.
I know I have such
All right.
I have such a huge queue, and now the hard part after I beat FF7 is deciding what next to play. Currently, I have my idea is to play Last of Us next, because that is the game that everyone talks about that I have not played. Well, one of the many games that everyone talks about that I have not played. But
that one is that is a benchmark in this last generations of games across all the systems, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would feel remiss if I did not experience it.
We're talking about The Last of Us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Ian?
Mm-hmm.
I've never gotten through the prologue of that game without breaking down crying, so just prepare yourself.
Okay.
just prepare yourself.
Oh boy, the waterworks are coming.
That was before I had kids.
I feel like I was very typical, closed off, masculine ideal of never crying until I became a parent, and man, now since I became a parent, the waterworks just flow freely for many things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so bring the tissues.
Okay.
You will need them.
Will do.
And if you need someone to talk to afterward, I'm happy to debrief with you.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that sequel to come out. Ooh, that's going to be fun. Now that that's been re-announced, or the release for it has been actually re-announced, it's going to be within a month, I think. Ooh boy, I got to get back and beat the DLC. So much to play, so little time. All right, well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. So thanks everyone for joining us for episode 84 of Mythos Busters, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.